Regular business meeting, November 16th, 2017. We will open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving right into reports with Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Michael Brooks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. I have a very short report. Just want to make a couple of brief announcements. First of all, there was an automatic alarm tonight at the middle school. Actually, it drove past the responders that were on their way there. Some microscopic dust particles got into one of the smoke detectors and set the alarm off. No fire, no issues, all cleared out. We have a custodial team heading down there to do some extra cleaning. It's not that it's dirty, it's just that those things are so sensitive that it does set things off every once in a while. Next, also, Mr. Bakatsias attended for me a forum this week. You probably saw it in the newspaper down in the Newburgh Armory for an opioid forum from Senator Larkin and a number of other state representatives. And maybe, Mr. Bakatsias, if you could give a 30-second review of what that was. It really was quite eye-opening the way you described things to me. So.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. That was senators who are on the New York State Task Force for Opioid Abuse were there to hear different groups and constituents from Orange County to make recommendations on what we need to fight this crisis. There were executives from various health agencies. The director of Crystal Run in Middletown was there. There were former addicts who talked about how difficult it was to find the help they really needed to get rid of this and to release themselves of the addiction and to then move on in life. So that was really the purpose. There were I believe 28 speakers in total, and all of them coming up and giving advice to this task force that would then take all of the suggestions of the task forces across New York State, and when they're back in session in January 2018, help craft legislation, but also associate that with funding to help us in this opioid epidemic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's an important topic for us to look at, keeping our families healthy. Ask questions of those that are around you. If there's people that are in need, there are resources out there to help. So please make sure you ask people around you if they are in need. If you notice things, ask the question. That's really where it starts. Want the board also to know they have one of their goals is to review our K-12 STEAM and STEM program. Next month, we are going to begin a forum with our staff regarding our math, science, and technology program. And the primary purpose is really to look at our current status of offerings K-12 in the area of math, science, and technology, areas of math, science, and technology in our elementary, in our middle school, and in our high school, and then develop what might be become a vision, a living document for a vision of where our math, science, and technology offerings should be as we move down towards the future. So certainly something we're very excited about. As a former science teacher, I'm just drooling at the opportunity to get into this, and I'm so glad that the board is supportive of us and really pushing us to look at this from a future perspective, not just from a current status perspective. So that gets going in December. Tonight we're going to hear a brief presentation from Mr. Bakatsias and Mrs. Hecht regarding DASA and our anti-bullying efforts. Prompted by a fantastic question from a board member regarding some options or opportunities that the board members saw out there and say, hey, what are we doing for our children? So it's an opportunity for us to take a look at that. Take a look at that. Also, I'm going to put on the board's radar, even though it's just November, it's time for us to start doing some at least thinking about what summer of 2018 might look like for our own selves for meeting purposes, because I would imagine that people are going to be starting to think about the future and what their summer would look like next summer. So We could look at what our July reorg meeting would be and where we would have our business meeting in August, and is there going to be some kind of a retreat or other type of meeting in that August timeframe. So I'll put some prompts out there in the next couple of weeks and see if we can nail something down. And finally, also on this agenda, in the school lunch fund financials, there are 3 different types of reports there to give a perspective of some options. Quite honestly, I agree with the board 100% that the original format really wasn't very newsworthy as far as providing good information. The other 2 formats, interesting. One looks at it from a school fiscal year to date, from a school year to date perspective. The other is the calendar or the fiscal year perspective. So any preferences, or we can continue producing all 3? They're very simple reports to produce, and I'll take any feedback on it. And finally, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Moving on to our student representative report given by Isabella Martinez.
Well, starting with the elementary school, they had a Veterans Day assembly. West Point vocalist Master Sergeant Marion Tate Messenger performed for the veterans along with the 5th grade chorus. There was also a family STEM fair held where Marist College students prepared 6 engineering stations. Students and families learned about sound, magnetism, earthquakes, animal habitats, and 2 forms of energy. Moving on to the middle school, students attended the Think It Expo at the IBM in Poughkeepsie on Saturday, November 4th. Students from Marble Middle School participated in IT Jeopardy, Mad Scientist exhibitions, and heard a lecture from the guest speaker, John Cohn. On Wednesday, November 8th, Power Up Night was held. Numerous faculty members presented workshops for parents and students on this evening. There was an excellent turnout and received great feedback from the parents and students alike. Thursday, November 9th, the National Junior Honor Society hosted the annual Veterans Day breakfast. The jazz band and the Marlboro Middle School Select Chorus provided wonderful music for this event. The girls' modified volleyball team finished their season with 7 wins and a 0 loss record. And then upcoming on November 30th is the first SWAT breakfast of the year. And regarding the holiday season, Lisa Krakowicz, sorry about that, is coordinating the Thanksgiving food baskets and other holiday gifts for the season. Students and staff who donate $1 will receive a feather to place on the big turkey in their main hallway. And then moving on to the high school, from October 30th to November 3rd, the high school celebrated Red Ribbon Week. The PTSA sponsored a week which promotes substance awareness abuse. Many students participated by signing safe decision pledges, and many students dressed along according to the daily themes. From October 26th to the 31st, students had an ambiance, family connections, college and career presentations in their 12th grade English classes. The other grades will have annual presentations later in the school year. On November 6th, Ms. Schlager and other science teachers hosted the scientist Rachel Stubbs from the New York State Police Forensics Labs. The varsity football team finished their season with a Section 9 title. And from November 9th to November 12th, the Marble High School Drama Club presented a fall play called The Birds.
Thank you, Isabella.
I do think she forgot to mention that Isabella was the lead in The Birds, so you did a fantastic job.
Thank you. As Mr. Brooks indicated, our next report comes to us via presentation by Mrs. Robin Hecht and Mr. Michael Bicaccios.
Thank you, Mrs. Horton. So we're going to give you a brief overview, really, of some of the policies that help manage and maintain a proper climate in our schools. That's both the workplace and the learning place. We know that the Dignity Act was created years ago in response to some real horrific outcomes of what we know bullying can do. We know that it hurts. We know that that's not an environment that students learn best in and achieve the most in, and therefore it was put to legislation years ago to create a more safe and supportive environment for learning. I'm going to speak to the staff, and then Robin will talk more about programs that students are involved with, aware of, and also at the building level. But certainly this theme of treating one another with dignity and respect doesn't just sit within the student body, it also sits within the employee body here in Marlboro Schools. So we have several ways that we do that, and really it's right from opening day, Superintendent's Conference Day. This year we had a staff compliance training. We had created a new website around this theme that I believe we presented once before, that really takes staff through all the school board policies and laws that they must adhere to as public employees. And many of those obviously have to do with anti-harassment, in other cases equal opportunity, and several others. But what it really does is set the tone for how we treat one another in the school environment. And really this year's theme, it kind of fit very well because Mr. Brooks opened up with the team concept, that we are all on one big team. And we're here to create the very best possible opportunities for students to succeed and leave us with the 21st century skills that we know they need. As a faculty and as a staff, we can fulfill that mission where in an environment where we treat one another with dignity and respect, we participate fully, we understand our roles, and there's mechanisms and protocols that we must follow as employees when those things don't happen. So we started to use some of the same terms that we did with students. See something, say something. We've talked to principals internally about in your meetings and in the meetings that you visit and frequent to make sure that everyone there has a voice and that they're being treated with dignity and respect, and to allow for a proper flow of communication, sharing of ideas, and problem solving, which is what we do in those areas. There's curricular issues, there's student behavior that we have to talk about, and there's so many different teams that the staff are a part of that we need to have the proper environment for those outcomes to take place. Along with that, we've also trained the staff with presentations from Trooper Vetter on safety issues. These are all kind of spin-offs of safety within our schools, feeling safe and secure and in the proper environment enables me to do better, whether it's at my job or in the classroom. So we started in the spring really kicking off with Trooper Vetter on assessing threatening behavior for the staff. A lot of that conversation was really about visitors to the school and assessing people coming into the school. Certainly they belong there, and certainly they might have children there, but sometimes they can get pretty hyped up. So de-escalation, looking for certain things and characteristics will allow us to really respond better to all kinds of situations. So aside from the assessing threatening behavior, we also had a drug awareness presentation with Trooper Vetter. So really talking about the effects of opioids, the heroin epidemic that we're experiencing here, and those effects, and being able to recognize what these might do, whether it's a student or adult, and then what do? We see something, say something. We have a duty to report that. Report it to the principal, report it to the nurse. Again, those health teams, those safety teams come together to help aid in those situations. And we further all of that professional development into the year with faculty meetings, conference days. Again, seeing on this slide, the attendance committee. RTI really starts to get down to the child level, so I know Robin will get into some of that. But aside from just the pieces that affect employees, all of those permeate students. If two employees have a discourse in front of students, what does that do to the environment? So we need to be conscious of that. There's a time and a place for those types of things. So these are the kinds of discussions and improvements we're looking to make. Not that it was bad, but it's always we're looking to improve. And this is a great place to work in. You see it on our website. Work in, live in, and learn in. And every one of those employees has a responsibility to do those things. Supports for staff and students? Well, we clearly identify through this process the training of staff, and students have all kinds of orientations when they start the year. There's freshman orientation, there's sixth grade orientation, there's kindergarten orientation, which are induction programs. And you learn a lot about the types of programs, DASA being one of them, who the DASA coordinators are, who to report these things directly to. Staff needs to be aware of that also, because if they hear something, hear students, see a student conflict, they need to know who to report that to. So the DASA coordinators are a vital piece of that. McKinney-Vento liaisons, some of the changes in the McKinney-Vento law, which are laws that affect homeless students or families in transition, also speak to those folks who, if the conditions are right, meet that criteria, also have certain supports that the school must provide. Title IX officers, you see, who are Robin and myself, those are appointed at the beginning of the reorg meeting, so July 1 or thereafter, the first board meeting of the school year, and we are appointed to support equal opportunity in the schools. We support the anti-harassment policy of the school board. So if there is a situation with those types of tones, we are called in to gather information, make decisions, refer additional training or resources, but that's the Title IX officers. As we move into the student layers, there's several layers of supports here that assure parents and students of the proper environment. You get into guidance counselors, student assistance counselor, nurses. I mean, they're presented there. I'm not going to read them all, but now you see the crossover into all the different supports for students. Before I lead the way into Robin, who will pick up this with the professional development, we have supports for staff as well. We are members in the Employee Assistance Program that provide a variety of services to employees in need. And that's not just with workplace issues, that's personal issues as well. So you have a lot of emotional supports, work supports there for staff. I'll now introduce Robin Heck, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, to pick up with the professional development and some of these specific programs at the building level.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity, because while doing it, I think that working with the principals and the assistant principals and talking through, sometimes it's nice to stop, look at everything, put it all out on paper, and then reevaluate everything. So that gave us that opportunity to look at everything that we are doing and then think about what directions we want to move in from here forward. So I've listed some of the professional development, and I say some because I didn't want to get too lengthy, but on Superintendent's Conference Day, as Mr. Bacasio shared, the blue link that you had on the second page is a live link to the mandates and the training that's available to all staff. There is yearly ongoing training for DASA and for VADAR. The principals and administration are retrained every summer and throughout the year. Digital citizenship is for all staff as well as all students. So prior to even going on to the computers, we have now the initiative of digital citizenship. There's CISM training, addressing trauma in school counseling settings, electronic investigation data. All of this helps us know what to look for and how to provide support. Safety meetings are ongoing, they're monthly. Health and wellness committees. We just recently had a poverty simulation for one level of our staff, and we're going to continue that. And it's, again, trying to raise the awareness to sensitivity to different groups of individuals. So if we know people better, we know how to interact with them better. Post-drilling reporting and cyberbullying and web safety. These are just a few of the initiatives that we've done throughout with students and with staff. And I invite the principals to chime in. I'm sorry that it's at an angle, but I did work with them to talk about the programs that they have in their building. So I'll start with MES. and they have the positive behavior intervention system throughout the building. I believe we might be going on the third year with that program within. But within that, there are other programs, responsive classroom, filling their buckets, plain kindness, acts of kindness. So there's many layers within trying to build character and showing children and teachers and administration the type of citizens we'd like to grow here in Marlborough. Behavior intervention plans, again, a throwback to the response to intervention. A large piece of that is conversations about teaching better behavior, making better choices. Each building has a DASA coordinator who offers training, one-to-one, small group, to student bodies. The McKinney-Vento grant-funded programs on trauma and sensitivity. We just recently, I know I spoke earlier in the year, provided one for the bus company, trying to, again, make people aware of the needs in our community. We have lunch buddy groups with bibliotherapy, so we have children that are meeting in small groups, learning how to be friends with other children. The beginning of social support groups at the elementary. Again, the digital citizenship training, the character education, the student code of conduct is gone through with parents and with student bodies. There are also after-school clubs, trying to increase that sense of belonging that you heard about in the middle school, and trying to show camaraderie. Ms. Walsh, did you want to add anything?
I don't think so, except one thing that resonated with me, something you said, was the fact that we are teaching children how to be friends. And some of us may take that for granted, but it is a different world. And oftentimes children haven't had that modeled for them, or they may not be from here and have friends readily available to them or family members. So they do need that kind of opportunity to engage with their peers at a supervised level so that they can then learn how to initiate and get themselves into social situations in an appropriate manner. So thank you very much for the work.
Thank you, you're welcome. So we'll move to the middle school. Olveas, and maybe the principals will extrapolate a little bit more about that if you have questions. Student-teacher mentoring program. Again, you heard about that last year, last week, 2 weeks ago? Not that long ago, right? Where the teachers will be assigned a student who needs some mentoring. Students with admirable traits. The breakfast is coming up next Friday, right? Building-wide focus on students' sense of belonging. That's a huge focus at the middle school at this point. I don't know if something that resonated from Mr. Steinmeier, I told him the next day, I won't forget the 11% that he is now focusing on. Not the 89 that are doing well, but that 11%. And I told him, it touched my heart. It really did. Again, after-school programs to increase the sense of belonging and encourage teamwork. DASA coordinators who do large presentations to the 6th grade, the 7th grade, and 8th grade body. Here I don't even mention the presentations that the administration organizes and brings in for students. Digital citizenship training, character education, and again, the student code of conduct. You'll start to see that there's a trend or a theme or a pattern so that we begin small and continue it on up. Would you like to add anything?
I've initiated, my new initiative right now is lunch with the principal. So my 6th graders have all been invited to select a date that they want to come and have lunch with me as a small group, so I can continue to build upon getting to know all of my students in a small group setting, which also is a complement to Frost Valley when we go with them and spend the overnight time with them, but not all students get to participate, so this is an opportunity to expand that. So I have quite a few lunch events. I think it probably helped that I said dessert was provided. I'm pretty sure that more of them said yes than no for that reason alone. But whatever it is, to have those conversations and for them to feel comfortable with me, with both of us, and for them, for me to know them better and to be able to identify what their needs are and make sure that we're meeting all of them. And in addition, I had talked last time about the essential elements, schools to watch, which we are fully immersing ourselves right now in that process, and a big part of it goes along with the sense of belonging and having mentors and advisorships and all of these different programs for students to make sure that everybody is connected in the building. And, middle school obviously is a challenging age, but part of the reason we love it, and to make sure that we meet all of their different needs, whether we're on a drama trip or at Frost Valley or, attending a volleyball game or whatever the case might be.
I mean, just that 11% that you referenced, Mrs. Hack, is we're in the stage now as the second quarter starts that we're really looking at those kids and the kids that really maybe failed the first quarter, using a term from Karen Brooks, diving down, digging deeper into who those kids are, and specifically meeting with them and intervening with them. So that's kind of focus now for the second quarter.
Thank you.
Support and help.
Thank you. And then our high school, our next step for student character programs are Safe School Ambassadors, our newly, I think, second year Link Crew, right, bringing that back. The DASA coordinator, again, the presentations that we involve our students in, the digital citizen training, the clubs, the character ed, student instruction focused on sensitivity, student code and conduct, and what I did not put up there was that the role modeling that the teachers provide for the students, because they're with the students all the time, and students, as I know everyone knows, children are watching and listening. So we have wonderful role models in our school that they are watching solve problems and treat each other well. Mr. Lawler, do you want to add anything?
Sure, the piece I'll point to, the student instruction focused on sensitivity. I don't think there's enough understanding what actually happens in our classes, in particular in social studies and English classes. It's very common for, as the instruction is happening for them, whether it's about history or whether it's about a piece of literature they're looking at, to really focus. In fact, I saw it in Ms. Casey's room a few weeks ago, having the students really understand different people's perspectives, the way that different perspectives impact things, how you should perceive the world in another person's shoes. And I think that really all goes into the fabric of how we treat each other. And I feel that's happening throughout the building.
Thank you. Thank you. So that concludes our presentation. Won't even move.
Thank you very much. Finishing out reports, last but certainly not least, our Student of the Month for November. Back to you, Mr. Brooks.
Wonderful, yes. Actually going to change it up a little bit, not necessarily in the order, but the who. So we're going to ask Mr. Cortolano if he would come up and present our high school Student of the Month.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Once again, thank you for allowing me to do this. It's a pleasure. We have a very special young lady. When I asked her how you would like me to do this, she said, Mr. C, be nice. So I'm going to be nice. Elaine is a wonderful child. This young lady is taking 4 college courses this semester. 4 college classes. God bless you. Without me talking any longer, I'd like to introduce Miss Rantanella. Please come up. Elena, come up, and she has a lot more wonderful things to say about this young lady.
So Elena was a freshman in my class a few years ago, 2014, in my honors English, and you were incredibly striking. Outgoing, confident, compassionate, delightful. And then I didn't get to see Elena except in passing for 2 years. And then this summer, the end of the summer, I get an email. Hi, Ms. Rantanella. I was not going to be living in this district, but things changed, and I would like to be in your college class. I have picked up the work. This is like 5 days before school starts. And I'm going to complete it all, and I will be prepared for the first day. And I was moved. This just shows how willing she was to sacrifice the rest of her summer to achieve greatness. And that's just one little example of the sacrifices that Elena has made this year to achieve greatness. Without getting personal, she is wise beyond her years, and she has faced a great deal in this short amount of time, but she's a fighter, and she is no victim. Everything she does with grace and with gratitude. The last thing I'm going to say is that my students in college English have to assess their own writing. Elena is a crafty writer. but she will never give herself a 6 out of 6 in any category. And she'll explain in her writing, I always see that there's a place for improvement. That's humility. Okay, I have students who are going 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, and it's really not even close to that. I am so thrilled to give her that 6 in that category because she earns it. And I'm just so happy that when the English department were discussing students who they wanted for a Student of the Month, and when I spoke, everybody was silent, and they said, no question, Elena is the one. And you are the one, and congratulations. Okay.
How about Mr. Stanmeyer for the middle school?
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Brooks, the board, parents, students for being here tonight. It is my great pleasure to introduce our Student of the Month, who I've had the pleasure of knowing since she was a 4th grader, and got to know her, personally, and to watch her grow over the last 3 years into a confident, outgoing, wonderful young lady is nothing but, I have a sense of pride for it, and just so happy for her. She's involved with soccer and chorus this year, and every year she adds something else to what she does, and how outgoing she has become and has grown her self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Miss Wolf, who's going to speak a little more about Sarah Brybeck. Congratulations.
I'm not as good as Miss Rand on the cuff here, so I have my paper ready. Okay, so it's a teacher's greatest wish to see a student succeed and thrive when faced with a challenging task. I know in my 7th grade ELA class they're faced with many, including public speaking. I'm sure you know the struggles as well. Many of us sit in this room today harboring the same anxieties and same fears that plague our students on a daily basis. Sitting up in front of this room, I shake still. Okay? 16 years ago at Marble Middle School, I was just like her. Hard to believe, I know. I was shy, timid. I hated the word presentation. When it was wrote on the homework board, I cringed in fear. Last year, I had the opportunity to look in the mirror as I watched another timid young lady interact with her peers in Mrs. Keene's 9th period study hall. Yes, I remember the dancing, Sarah. I recall that one of her greatest challenges was public speaking and being in front of her peers. I'm happy to report that this is no longer the case. Sarah took the difficult task of a mock trial presentation in my room and floored not only her peers, but her teachers as well. Her inflection, her power, her delivery were both dynamic and revealing to her true potential. We are so proud of her achievements. On behalf of the Green Team, I'm honored to present the November Student of the Month, Sarah Brybeck, and look forward to her continued pursuit and personal growth. Who knows, someday maybe you'll even join us in drama club. I do it too.
Congratulations on the Board of Education. We're very proud of you. Keep up the great work, and you're going to go far.
Thank you.
From this radio station.
And we'll finish off the evening with the elementary school with Mrs. Walsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to have one of our former students. We had Sarah here in Milton Elementary School, so congratulations. Congratulations always to our students of the month. Tonight I am here to present the Marlborough Elementary School Student of the Month, and this month it is first grader Emiliano Cervantes, and he's presented by not only his first grade teacher, Ms. Laura Perry, but also we are very graced to have our paraprofessional extraordinaire, Mrs. Doris Garcia, here to translate, because Emiliano's family's from Mexico, and we want them to understand all the words that we are saying that are wonderful about Emiliano. So come on up.
Miss Garcia is actually going to read first.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Doris García y me encuentro aquí por petición de la señorita Perry para leer para ustedes las palabras que ella tiene en español para su estudiante del mes. ¿Sabían ustedes que el cerebro de un estudiante de ENL trabaja 4 veces más duro que el de un estudiante típico? Para quienes no lo saben, ENL significa inglés como un nuevo lenguaje o idioma. Estos estudiantes de ENL primero escuchan la información en inglés y luego, para comprenderla, la procesan en su lenguaje nativo. Después de esto, para lograr responder, ellos formulan sus respuestas en su lenguaje nativo y trasladan sus pensamientos a inglés. La señorita Perry me pidió leer estas palabras en español con el fin de que todos nosotros podamos tener una mejor idea de lo que experimentan algunos de nuestros estudiantes de ENL. Siendo este el primer año en que la señorita Perry está enseñando en la clase asignada para ENL, ella admite que en un principio se sintió un poco nerviosa. Sin embargo, sus conocimientos de español aprendidos en la universidad vinieron a ella rápidamente en el primer día de escuela, en el momento de darle la bienvenida a sus estudiantes, diciéndoles: hola, me llamo la señorita Perry, ¿cómo te llamas? ¿Cómo estás? Un estudiante que le ha brindado a ella toda su ayuda de una manera inmensa es Emiliano Cervantes. Emiliano ha asumido el rol del intérprete de la clase con gracia, entusiasmo, orgullo y determinación. Siempre está deseoso y dispuesto a traducir para todo tipo de información para sus compañeros de clase y para la señorita Perry. En esta clase hay un estudiante que es nuevo para la Escuela Elemental de Marlborough y que proviene de España. Emiliano ha tomado a este nuevo estudiante bajo sus alas, guiándolo a través de la escuela, enseñándole las reglas, asegurándose de que tenga un amigo a la hora del almuerzo y alguien con quien jugar durante el recreo. Al mismo tiempo que Emiliano trabaja diligentemente para completar sus asignaciones, siempre se acerca a la señorita Perry y le pregunta: señorita Perry, ¿quiere que me asegure de que Romeo entiende? Emiliano es un niño amable, educado y brillante. Es con gran placer que la señorita Perry recomienda a Emiliano Cervantes para recibir el premio del estudiante del mes.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Did you know an ENL student's brain works 4 times as hard as a typical student? For those of you who may not know, ENL stands for English as a New Language. These ENL students first hear information in English and then process the information into their native language for understanding. Then, to respond, they formulate their response in their native language and translate their thinking back into English. I asked Ms. Garcia to read this speech in Spanish first so we all could get a better understanding of what it might be like for some of our ENL students. As my first year teaching the ENL class, I have to admit I was a little nervous. However, on that first day, my college-level Spanish skills quickly came back to me as I greeted many of my students with, "Hola, me llamo Señorita Perry. ¿Cómo se llama?" One student who has helped me tremendously is Emiliano. Emiliano has graciously taken on the role of a classroom translator with enthusiasm, pride, and determination. He is always willing and eager to translate any information to his fellow classmates or to myself. One student in our class is new to MES from Spain. Emiliano has taken him under his wing, showing him around the school, teaching him the rules, making sure he has a friend to eat lunch with and someone to play with on the playground. In between working diligently to complete his own work, Emiliano always approaches me and says, "Miss Perry, would you like me to make sure Romeo understands?" Emiliano is a kind, polite, bright young boy. It is with great pleasure that I recommend him with this month's Student of the Award recipient.
You know, I'm going to do it again because it doesn't get old. I'm just so impressed with what I hear about the children every time we do Students of the Month. I mean, I know Elena had to leave, but Emiliano and Sarah, you must make your families so proud. There's just such nice things to hear about you. When I hear about people that are delightful, are outgoing, compassionate, they thrive and succeed, they overcome challenges, they've seen personal growth because of their own work ethic. They're classroom translators. I mean, come on, how great is this as a first grader, a classroom translator? Work diligently, you're kind, you're polite. Thank you for being who you are. I love the stories, I love to hear about it. It's great seeing Dukes being like this, because that's really what it's all about. So thank you, teachers, thank you, admins. Most importantly, thank you, families and children. You're wonderful people, keep that up. We love it. Thank you.
We'll take a couple minutes of a break, so all of you who wish to get home can do so. Yeah. Well, the fact that he's so tiny just makes it so much better. I don't know, did we get a, well, it can't be next Friday. She said it was next Friday.
It's not next Friday. Can't. Did you check this one with the...
It's not on
How'd you miss the play?
because they didn't really know what was going on. I always checked the website. I went to the football game Friday night, and then I had somewhere to go Saturday night, so I couldn't go. No,
normally we always know when it's advertised. I mean, they've done robocalls, they don't do anything.
There was all kinds of advertising.
I'm gonna say on Instagram and those I don't always go on.
And the website, I saw it there too.
I don't really go on the website.
Yeah, I don't see the SWAT thing on there, so I don't think it's.
Moving on to number 3. If there is public comment on agenda items, I ask that you please approach the podium stating your name, town of residence, keeping your comments to agenda items only. Moving on to number 4, consent agenda. Resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve the consent agenda items such as the personnel recommendations, first reading of policy section number 6000 and policy number 7521, claims audit report, unofficial meeting minutes of November 2nd, 2017, financial reports, Education Inc. contract. Can I get a motion to approve consent agenda items as listed? James, a second. Joanne? Discussion? Cast your vote.
Okay, folks, our audience has dwindled a little bit, but I would like to introduce one of the new staff members that was just appointed, Amanda O'Connor, who couldn't make it tonight. Certainly we welcome her. She's been working down at the elementary school for a short-term leave position. But we also have a new teaching assistant working in our library at the elementary school, Michelle Weckman. Michelle, welcome to Marlborough.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Moving on to number 5, resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, authorize the filing of return tax claims for the 2017-2018 school year as presented. Can I get a motion to authorize the filing of return tax claims? Russell, second. Frank, any discussion?
Just, I know Mike provided us with the breakdown. It's good to see that progressively each year, the amount of taxes that we have to send back to the county for collection has gone down. So that's a positive sign.
You have to wonder if it's a function of the economy. I wonder.
Cast your vote. Motion has been carried 6-0. Moving on. Resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve and authorize the Superintendent of Schools to sign the stipulation of agreement by and between Marlborough Central School District and the UPSEU Operations and Food Service Unit as presented. Can I get a motion to approve and authorize the stipulation of agreement? Joanne, second. James, any discussion? Cast your vote. Motion has been carried 6-0. Moving on, resolve that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve and authorize the Superintendent of Schools to sign the stipulation of agreement by and between Marlborough Central School District, what did I just do? No, and the UPSEU Paraprofessional Unit as presented. Can I get a motion to authorize the signing of the stipulation? James, second. Russell? Any discussion? Cast your vote. The motion has been carried 6-0. Moving on to old business. Is there any old business that the board would like to address? Any new business? Any other items? At this time, we'd like to recognize district residents. Yes, Mr. Walters, would you please approach the podium?
About 2 months ago, it was announced there was a vacancy on the board. And it was a lot of discussion whether you were going to fill it, wait till May. Then I remember reading something that you were accepting applications, which I think ended about a month ago. 2 questions. One, how many applicants did you get? And has a decision made? Are you waiting until May's election, or will you be appointing somebody?
So to answer your first question, there have been 3 applicants, and just recently, Mr. Witherow sent each one of those applicants an invitation to come and speak at our December 21st, our December 21st meeting to present their intent to the board.
That's the December board meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
So you haven't made a decision yet?
No, we have not. We are looking forward to hearing them come and speak to us about their intent. Any further public comment? We do have an executive session scheduled for the purpose of pending litigation and the employment of a particular person. I do not anticipate for there to be action taken. Can I get a motion to enter into executive session? James, second. Russell, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?